Boom, bah, boom, ba-dum, boom, boom. It's Biss, it's back. What's up? Welcome to the show. Today, we're going to be talking all about non-humanoid mocks. And you might be like, oh, I don't really know what that means. Well, basically, you got your typical, like, human body, that sort of human shape to a character that is a humanoid character. And you got your non-humanoids, which is everything that isn't that. So here's a little funky diagram I found with some really out there crazy designs, like this big chicken man. But these kind of quite well illustrate the non-humanoid look. And, you know, maybe you want to build a mock that's a little bit more out there, a little bit more unique, a little bit more different. You know, I'm making up the statistic here, but I imagine like 70% of the mocks online are humanoid mocks. Just because, you know, that's what's around us, you know. Most of the things around us are humans, and we want to build humanoid characters because we can relate to them in some fashion. But, you know, it's kind of like Star Wars, you know, as cool as all the human characters are, you got your Anakins, your Obi-Wans, your Vaders and stuff. The non-humanoid characters can be pretty cool, you know, the alien species, they're also pretty cool. I mean, a lot of them are just humanoid characters, but not all of them. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, kind of going a little bit more out there and a little bit more unique than just that typical human frame. Characters that aren't Toa necessarily, you know, they're not your typical human shape. They are non-humanoid, as the title suggests. So let's move on to the first mock that we've got in this episode today, talking about some non-humanoid characters. The first one we've got is by Sergei Rachmaninov, and this is called Forgemaster Senos. So this mock is non-humanoid in terms of how the legs are designed. He instead has these really awesome tread legs using a bunch of these tread pieces. Pretty much any set that those tread pieces come in, you get a lot of them. Because you got to connect a whole bunch of them to make the treads, and they got to move and all sorts of things. So if you've bought a set that comes with those tread pieces, it's quite likely you have a lot of them. So might be worth using some of those pieces in a mock. And there are multiple sizes for those tread pieces too. There's those ones in black. There's also some smaller ones, which are about, well, they're kind of about half the size, probably even less than that, of what these look like. Those come in like brown and black and maybe another color that I'm missing. And then you got much larger ones, which you see on like Technic sets and stuff. So if you're planning on doing some treads in a mock, kind of getting a cool looking foot leg design like this, that might be the thing that you're looking for. But this is a really awesome design for a legs on a mock here, you know, kind of the way it's all been armored on the side here, adding a whole bunch of CCBS armor, shells and things, and it seems he's just sort of attached them in various ways there. It's a little difficult to tell. There's only the one picture of this mock, sadly, but, you know, I'm sure it's just connected through ball joints and other various little connection things, or maybe it's just connected through friction and stuff. But even still, it looks very nice. And it really helps to communicate this sort of robot worker design where, you know, he doesn't need legs, he's just on treads because it's probably how robots are, you know, you're actually getting a robot to walk around on two legs like a human can be quite difficult. Whereas if it's just on treads, you know, it's a little bit more easier. Of course, that's different when you're building a toy, you know, made of Bionicle pieces. I'm talking about real-world robots. That's normally the route to go. And so maybe you want to, you know, kind of have a little bit of realism behind your character there to some degree. And, you know, that could be one option that you could consider. And I think, too, it communicates a lot of character on this mock. You know, Mr. Rachmaninov here has written this whole story that's awesome, like the little data logs of this robot guy. And it's a fun little read. So if you want to read that, you can check out the post. There's a link in the description below. But I also love the little additions of like this system anvil here, this big old hammer that he's got, and a few other things here that kind of communicate this sort of worker drone look to him. I think it just looks super cool. And it really fits with the legs too. You know, it looks very industrial. It looks very like, you know, drone kind of worker guy, like I was saying before. It's very fitting. So a lot of the choices that he's made seem really justified and really help to communicate different aspects of the character. So I really, really like that. I also really like the head design on this guy here, using the Pahatu mask there, but flipping it. And then also adding that dish piece there as like an eye for a sort of robot head thing. It's actually really awesome and looks super cool. And again, kind of communicates that worker drone look that this guy has. It's very nice. I also like the fact, too, that he's got these smaller pairs of arms here that are kind of closer to the head, but then he's got these massive big arms at the back as well. Again, that's just a really nice look and aesthetic, very non-humanoid in that regard, because, of course, typical humans don't have forearms. It just looks nice. And again, I can kind of see that working with the character that he's got going here, you know. He's got his big arms for sort of the more heavy-duty tasks that he has to do, you know, whacking his hammer on the anvil and, you know, lifting heavy things or whatever. And then he's got his little arms there for, you know, I don't know, reading little data schematics or, you know, writing things on papers or, just, you know, having a nice drink while he's hammering away, you know, stuff like that. I think, again, more characters being communicated. So I really like that, all the choices that he's done and how that really says a lot about the mock too. Super cool. So very nice work there, Sergei. Let us move on to the next mock. And this is a mock by Christian Helgelson, and these did not have a name. The email that these were submitted with simply called them My Mocks. So There you go. So I like the digigrade leg design that this mock has here. Looks very cool. I also like the choice of color here too, kind of giving the silver on the legs there. And there's a little bit of silver throughout the rest of the mock in a few other places, but it is primarily black for the most part. And I kind of like that. It kind of looks like maybe he's got some robot legs or something, and maybe his legs were damaged in some accident or some battle or something, and so he's got robot legs as a cool replacement there. It's fitting, it looks cool, and yeah, whether or not that's the intention, or it could just be that he just has silver on his color scheme, and that's just where it is on the mock. Either way, it still looks cool, you know, it's nice having it concentrated in one area there, kind of gets you thinking about what it could be representing or looking like. I like that a lot. Also like the fact too that this guy actually kind of transforms to some degree, you know, he kind of stands up, and I guess kind of like a bear or certain other animals, he can sort of lean down in this more sort of animalistic pose, kind of, yeah, looking like a bit more of a predator, like maybe he runs a bit faster like that or something. It just looks really nice, looks cool. It's a fun way of, of again, being a little bit more non-humanoid in that regard, and just advancing the character a little bit more. And it, you know, it's not like you necessarily have to factor that in while you're building it. It could just be the case of, I built this humanoid guy that stands up. Actually, I might have him sort of also kind of crouch down a bit, and maybe play with the design a little bit so that maybe looks a bit better, or it just looks fine as it is. And yeah, so they can kind of be on all fours or standing on two legs, and that's just how the character works and operates. And it's a fun, very simple addition that you could make to any mock. I quite like that a lot. I also quite like the fact that he used a lot of these Cricker pieces here. There's Cricker Mystica from the Mystica wave of Lego Bionicle sets here. Had some really obscure pieces, this sort of milky white marbled in with a bit of red as well. It's kind of a milky red as well, actually. It was very, very weird colors, but they look super cool. But, you know, that set was really the only time you sort of saw that kind of color scheme on any piece. So getting bulk of those pieces, or just specifically focusing on using just those pieces on one mock there, is a nice way of being able to use those pieces, because they're good, but they're just hard to use with a lot of other things. You can kind of put it with white or red, because that's kind of the closest colors that are on there, but because it does have that milkiness to the color, they just don't kind of work together. So doing like this mock's done here, and, you know, having multiple bits of those pieces being used and kind of concentrating them in certain areas, I think that's the way to roll with these pieces. And I like how they look here. You know, it kind of looks like he's got this sort of bone mask on, or, you know, this sort of funky weapon, kind of Freddy Krueger style. Looks pretty cool, very fun sort of arm claw there. And yeah, a great way of using those specific colored pieces there. It's pretty cool. So yeah, a fun non-humanoid design here. Yeah, this one and the last, well, not so much the last one that had sort of multiple arms and different legs and was kind of more robotic and hunched over and stuff. This one's a little bit closer to a more humanoid style, you know, it does sort of bear a lot of resemblance to a typical humanoid frame, but very much the shape of the legs and the fact that it does lean over like that very much represents a more non-humanoid look. And I think that's really fitting and really appropriate. And interesting too to note that you don't have to necessarily be a massive departure from the humanoid look. You can just do very subtle, small adjustments, and that'd be all that you need. Let's move on to the next mock, and this mock is called, this mock is by Tora and is called Quack, Quack, Motherf. I would have sworn, I would have said it, but that's exactly how this mock is written, so guess not. I think this mock is super funny. It won the title, and then just the fact that it's this really well-built duck, but he's got this massive Gatling gun on his back there. That's so funny and so cool. I really, really like that. The gun design itself is super cool, using all these tubes here, kind of illustrating, you know, how the ammo is sort of flowing through it, or just, you know, just looks nice, looks sort of more, it kind of fits in with all the gears and the other things that are on here too, and yeah, that too, focusing on gears and tire pieces and axles and things to kind of create the barrel and the rest of the gun and everything. It's very, very fitting. And I also love the fact that the gun itself is so massively comically large. It makes the mock a lot more funnier. Really sells the concept as well. You know, if the gun was just a little tiny kind of thing, yeah, it'd be cool, I guess. But the fact that it is just massive, that's what sells it for me. And then talking about the duck, really nice color choices here with the blues and the whites and there's actually a fair few amount of colors, to be honest. But it kind of works. You know, you see a bunch of those colors on ducks in our world. You know, you've got your white sort of ducks or other, you know, birds that swim around, and the blues and the greens, you see those sorts of shades on certain ducks depending on where you are in the world and stuff, and it's pretty cool. And I also love the little highlights of cute orange here, specifically on the bill, using those feet pieces as a bill on the duck. That's really is a beautiful looking piece used there, especially the two together like that. Looks fantastic. And then those mutter heads there used as the sort of webbed feet. It's another really nice piece use, and again, a nice way of sort of having this beautiful pop of color. And then that additional color there for the eyes, very appropriate, very fitting, you know, just you know, like I was saying, there's a whole bunch of different colors used here, but the way that he's layered them and the way that he's put them on and kind of justified why they are that color, it doesn't make this mock too busy or, has too many colors going on, so it's a bit confusing or whatever. It makes sense, and so it looks good. But yeah, of course, very much non-humanoid because it's a duck. It's not human at all. And it's got a gun on its back. Super cool. Great concept. Love it. Always cool when you build a mock that's sort of not taking itself too seriously. Nothing wrong with making a mock that's super serious. He's this guy who his parents died at birth, and now he has to hunt down his arch nemesis for the rest of his life, and he has a flame sword, and he's super cool, and blah blah blah. Nothing wrong with that at all. That's always fun. But just being like, I'm gonna just build a duck with a gun on its back, or I'm gonna build a crocodile with sneakers and a top hat. That's fun. That's funny. Why not? Could just be a good way of playing around with pieces, or it can just be a fun concept that you want to build because it's something to do. It's cool. So very nice work there, Tora. I adore your mock. Let's move on to the next one, and this is by Shea Bosses, and this is Red Reaper, the Red Reaper, in fact. So I love that this is a very CCBS heavy body, but the head itself is very system heavy. I kind of like that, because it actually works quite well, Kind of gets this really unique shape to the head design there. The pieces actually, for the most part, kind of flow very well with the rest of the mock, in my opinion. I think it looks pretty cool. It's just always nice to see sort of system Bionicle hybrids, because I've said it countless times, the pieces always work very well together, and it's a great way to achieve a very specific look that you might be after if you do introduce a bit of system into your Bionicle. And this is a great example of that. So taking a look at the body here, we can see sort of this big one sort of frame here that's been all armored up, and that's sort of forming the kind of top of the back. But then kind of where the belly is, there's this additional sort of beam of CCBS bones with armor on it, and that kind of helps to sort of buff out the torso a bit. And you saw that on a few of the sort of larger Titan sets, specifically on like leg designs on a lot of those guys. They would have that sort of dual thing of using two layers of CCBS bones and then armoring them, and that kind of helped buff things out, and then finding a way of connecting the two together just so that you can get a much wider stance there, I guess, instead of just the typical one layer of bone and one layer of shell on top of that. It's a good way of kind of buffing stuff out, and it's pretty easy to achieve. You just got to find some way of connecting it, or you don't even necessarily need to connect it. You just need to find the 2 points that they sort of join onto the body. The middle bit there might not actually be connected. They could move if you were to force them to move, but you just won't do that when you're playing with it. And it works. It's a good way of kind of buffing out a bit of CCBS there, and getting the depth that you're looking for. Also like too all these outdoor shots here, especially some of them where he's like climbing up a tree or hiding in the grass and stuff, and he's sort of posing in some more animalistic poses there. It looks really cool, and it's really fitting too for the sort of story that this mock has. Being this sort of top predator that can swim around and climb trees and cliffs and stuff. And yeah, it's kind of painting a picture of its, the way that it would live, the surroundings that it has, all that sort of stuff. And I quite like that a lot. It's really cool. It's a really nice work there. Very cool. Of course, non-humanoid, and the fact that, again, not human, it's more sort of tiger-like to some degree. It's very cool. Let us now move on to the next mock, which is by Victor and is Droideka, which he says in the description here, aka Star Wars Borok. Interesting parallel. Not one I would have made, but I kind of like your thinking. So I think this is another beautiful CCBS system hybrid here. All the CCBS in here is very justified, and the specific choice of like some of the, there's actually a Rakshi back on the side, or on the back. There's a Rakshi spine on the back there, which is not CCBS, it's Bionicle pieces, but same thing. And that, combining that with those Hero Factory shells and everything, they really are the perfect shapes and textures for armor on a Droideka. Of course, you might be like, what's Droideka? Droideka are some of the battle droids from the Star Wars prequels. Very, very awesome characters. Not really, well, I guess you could call them they're still characters, even though they don't really have dialogue in the movies and stuff, they're still characters. But really beautiful to see just how perfect those pieces are for making a Droideka. So if you yourself are like, yeah, I do enjoy my destroyer droids, I might consider making some in some Bionicle and making a little bit of system throwing in there too, those pieces might be the perfect thing you need. And also too, focusing on the legs here, just the way that those legs there have been made, simply would have been, I imagine, connected in the middle there with one of the triaxle pieces, because it is in that triangle kind of shape there. Very simple way of doing it, and you can kind of sort of reverse engineer it from there once you kind of realize, I imagine that's the piece in the core there. You can, again, easily reverse engineer it from there. And that's always something I very much recommend doing when you're looking at any of the pictures of any mocks, whether it's on BIS or just mocks that you're finding on the internet. Do your best to try and reverse engineer them, see if you in your head can kind of paint a picture of how exactly they made certain parts of the mock. And then that way you yourself can kind of implement that on your own mock, or reverse engineering can just be a good way of studying a mock and learning new techniques so that you can apply it in your own future builds. Going back to the legs here though, I really also like the fact that he's used this other CCBS Hero Factory piece here at the bottom, the bit that's the very, very tip of the, I guess, feet or the legs or whatever you want to call them, the little tripod design that he's got here. I don't know what you call those pieces. I think you kind of typically saw them on heroes. You sort of attach them to like arms and stuff, and so it's kind of a way for them to have some weapons sort of around their wrists and things. But you know, whatever you call that piece, again, very, very fitting for a Droideka, almost perfect for it. I love that. Really, really nice use of pieces here because they very much illustrate the exact looks and shapes and textures and things of a Droideka. Great work. Now let's move on to the final mock in this episode, and this is a mock by Anthony Wilson and is called Centipede Plague Mech Omicron. Ooh, baby, this is a really, really, really beautiful mock. Color scheme is just on point, looks fantastic. The general shape and just monstrous, overpowering look that this thing has. This mock just has presence. It's like, boom, you're looking for this. It's just, it's incredible. I really, really like some of the best work that you've done, Anthony. I love it. Let's go into why. So, of course, this is a non-humanoid mock, and the fact that it's this big, giant bug guy with a whole bunch of legs. And, you know, multiple arms, this funky head, this sort of S shape to his body there. It's cool. And that's always a sort of a good stimulus that you can kind of look for when making a non-humanoid mock, is kind of base it around a specific shape or maybe a letter of the alphabet. You know, like I was saying, this is kind of S-shaped. Maybe you want to build a character that is a little bit more shaped like a Q or a Z or an X or something. I don't know. Like, I'm just throwing out numbers and letters here, but, you know, kind of basing it off that general shape could actually be a decent stimulus for your mock. Or, you know, maybe, you know, a head design looking a little bit more triangular, or the body design actually looking a bit more like a pentagon or something. That could kind of inform the images that you need in your head to be able to kind of bring the mock to life, you know. Weird stimuluses, but they could work for what you're doing. I love the eggs on the side here with these sort of trans green pouches things here, and then adding Zamaspheres into them. Terrifying and creepy, very fitting of this sort of bug robot look that is a plague mech. Very, very cool to see. And then I also love the fact that Anthony's repeated all of these different Technic panel pieces here, all up along the body, and then also on the head there too. The fact that he's repeated them kind of gives it this look of the sort of exoskeleton of a bug, but it also kind of helps to kind of create a very consistent texture and shaping and everything throughout the mock. And it's also cool too, the fact that he has repurposed them on the head there, and the fact that he's kind of flipped them and put them in a different angle to the way they are on the sort of torso belly area on the mock. They actually look very different to some degree, but they're very similar because they're the same piece. And so again, you're kind of creating unity throughout the mock. Everything's sort of working together as one, as you know, these pieces have very similar textures, very similar shaping, color, and everything. It's brilliant to see. I also love all these multiple arms and things. The fact that they are quite skinny, but they also have all these greebles on them, from like these minifigure aerials to iron bars and all sorts of other little funky details and things. It gives it this more robotic, mechanical look, which is essentially what a plague mech is, right? A robot that has very heavy bug inspiration on it. And even these claws and things too, just the fact they have lots of multiple articulation points in these claws, the actual specific claw tooth pieces on the edges there, just they look so sinister and evil, and kind of really helps to create a personality on this mock. It's super cool. But I think, honestly, probably my favorite thing on this mock is the head design, using these funky ghost blades that came on some Ninjago sets. They are perfect for the little pincers. This eye here, again, very, very perfect, very cool look to it. Very sinister, the sort of monocyclops eye, but it kind of sort of has two little smaller eyes up the top there. If those are in fact eyes, they could just be, little lights or something, depending on the intention. I don't really know. But it just looks cool. Super menacing, awesome head, and just a brilliant, super menacing, awesome mock. I did forget to mention the back detail on this is absolutely gorgeous. This beautiful greebling and this sort of beautiful mechanical look to it. All these wires and tubes flowing everywhere and more eggs, and it's gorgeous. Absolutely love this mock. Really, really nice work, Anthony. You've done a magnificent job. And again, I already kind of mentioned how it was non-humanoid, but speaking of non-humanoids, that has been an episode purely on non-humanoid mocks. And I should probably say, by the way, this episode was in fact voted by you. Some of you might not realize yet, although quite a lot of you vote on it. I get like 700 or 800 votes per time I put them up, so it's pretty good. But maybe you don't know. Head on over to the community tab on my YouTube page, and every week I normally post a little poll that says, hey, what episode do you want to have next? And I put, 5 or 6 episodes up, and then you guys pick from them. More recently, I've been filming a bit of a backlog of episodes. I have... Well, let me tell you, how many have I got at the moment? I have got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-ish episodes in the bank. I'll put some of those specifically up in the poll. but I'll also throw up a few others as well. And so with that, it can be the case of whichever one wins, be sure to submit mocks that fit to that theme, because then it's a little more likely they'll appear a little bit more sooner. But even if you have mocks that don't specifically fit the theme that's going to be next, that's totally okay. Submit them anyway. They'll be on the show in some time, So hopefully you enjoyed this episode. If you want to submit your own mocks to the show like I was just talking about, you can do so through the email you're currently seeing on your screen right now. And also, please be sure to check the links in the description, because there are links to all the mocks that you saw in today's episode, so you can take a look at some of the other things that they've built and give those guys some love. They very much deserve it. And also, some of my own social media links are there if you wish to see some of my other stuff. You can if you want. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now, guys. See ya.